All right, this is geometry in the quadratic formula. We're going to go through a few different problems that can be solved using the quadratic formula. Not all of them on these pages, but some. So first off, let's start by beginning and discussing what is the quadratic formula. So there's a song. You may know the song. I will not be singing it for you, but this is the quadratic formula. So it's x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now you might be wondering, where do those a, b, and c values come from? Well, they come from this. Oops. Oh, I made a mistake there. Let me fix that real quick. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. They're the coefficients and the constant of a quadratic equation that is set equal to 0. So here's how I do this. I usually start by writing down what a, b, and c are equal to. So if I look at my equation, there's nothing in front of the m squared, so there's an invisible 1 right there. So I put down a 1. In front of the m is a negative 5, so I put that down. And then there's a negative 14. And now I go and I just plug everything in. So it's negative b. However, right now b is already a negative. So it's a negative negative, meaning it's going to turn into a positive, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Now I'm going to be really careful, and I'm going to put my negative 5 in parentheses, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. So from there now, what I do is I just start to evaluate this. So I grab my calculator, and a lot of this you can actually do in your head too if you're careful. I start with that negative 5 and square it. Well, that's a 25, so I now have 5 plus or minus the square root of 25. Then I would take care of this 4, 1, and negative 14. So I go negative 4 times 1 times negative 14 on my calculator, and I get a positive 56 all over 2 times 1, which is just 2. Keep simplifying that out. I go 25 plus 56, and I get an 81. So I have 5 plus or minus the square root of 81 all over 2. Now, sometimes we can go farther, most of the time actually. I happen to know the square root of 81. If I didn't, I could use my graphing calculator or my scientific calculator. But I know the square root of 81 is 9. So this turns into 5 plus or minus 9 over 2. Now, that is technically 2 solutions, and I can simplify or evaluate both of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it into 2 equations, 5 plus 9 over 2 and 5 minus 9 over 2. And now I evaluate. 5 plus 9 is 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 5 minus 9 is negative 4. Negative 4 divided by 2 is a negative 2. My m values are 7 and negative 2. And I have successfully solved using the quadratic formula. I'm going to have you guys pause the video here and try to do number 2. Set it up and see if you can evaluate that out. It should turn out pretty nice as well. All right, so let's take a look at some of these other factoring problems. We'll try some more here. This number 12. You can see that it's 5r squared equals 80. Remember that if we're going to use the quadratic formula, we have to get it equal to 0 on one side. So the first thing we want to do is bring that 80 over. We're going to have 5r squared minus 80 equals 0. From there, we'll identify our a, b, and c values. Our a is the one in front of the squared term. B is usually in front of the just variable term. There is none there, so our b is actually going to be 0 this time, and our c is going to be 80. Now we go ahead and we plug those into our quadratic formula. So negative b, that's already a 0, so it's just going to be 0 plus or minus the square root of b squared, well that's 0 squared, minus 4 times a, that should be a negative c on that 80, sorry for c value, there we go, all over 2 times a. And now from here, we're just going to be careful as we go through. We have some zeros that are going to just do nothing to our equation, so I'm just going to kind of cross those off. 4 times 5 is 20. 20 times 80 is 1600, and we have 2 negatives, so that's going to be the square root of a positive 1600. all over 2 times a, which is 10. Now, careful, don't lose that plus or minus in front of the square root. You want to make sure that you keep hold of those because that's going to help us make sure we have our 2 solutions. Now I would go to my calculator and try to take the square root of 1600. You should be able to get that to be 40. So we have plus or minus 40 over 10. Now remember, that's going to split into 2 equations, positive 40 over 10 and negative 40 over 10. Simplify both these and we have 4 and negative 4 for our solutions for R. All right, and I think we can stop there for our examples. You can have some weird things happen as well, where you have some stuff left underneath the square root, but we'll stop there and hopefully you'll be able to kind of figure it out as you go through.